Sorry, Toronto, can you hear me? Is this, sorry, can I see your notice?
Ready to go? Are we ready? Okay. Come to order. Hello, everybody. Once again, we are joined by witnesses for the TFW Temporary Foreign Workers Study. We are waiting for a few witnesses who are apparently coming through security, but we're going to get started with testimony, presentations, I should say, from our first witness, who is Mr. Robert Watson. No, sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Bruce Webster. Mr. Webster, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hear you very well.
Mr. Webster's appearing as an individual via video conference from Langley, British Columbia, and we're just going to get started with your presentation. You can keep it to 7 minutes, please, sir. Thank you very much, and welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, excuse me if I'm reading from my notes because I don't want to anything. I've experienced as a person executing power of attorney for my late mother all of the situations I'm about to describe. First, Employment Canada's method of determining an applicant's ability to adequately cover all expenses associated with a caregiver is limited and inaccurate. Their basis of judgment is to look at the past year's CRA assessment, line 150, I believe. This method is fair for someone who is employed, but for most retirees looking for caregivers is inaccurate. For example, my mother's income was generally less than $50,000 per year. However, she had in excess of $350,000 in investments and outright ownership of her home. So it took a protracted and lengthy discussion with Toronto to prove that my mother's ability to pay was in fact valid. Secondly, the processing time is a huge detriment to elderly wishing to hire in-home caregiving. In my mother's case, it took 21 months from the time the then LMO was initiated until I finally had a caregiver in her house. My mother celebrated both her 99th and 100th days with full-blown dementia and increasing states of total confusion while I was trying to provide for her with adequate in-home care. Some days we had to put her into institutions, which she totally detested. Thirdly, the duplication of information, and this is very key, the duplication of information asked for by various departments in supporting the LMO and temporary foreign worker issuance of a work permit is a lot of duplication, and I feel a waste of the applicants and the government's employees' time. This should be simplified and perhaps streamlined. There should be some of interaction between the various agencies, employment and immigration, so that the duplication is reduced, and thus the time of 21 months could be reduced as well. For example, I was seeking to hire a lady from the Philippines who had been referred to me. She met all the criteria as demanded by the TFW program for elder care, and yet the embassy on one occasion sent an email to her, and part of that email was in fact directed to me. She did not realize that she needed to direct the email. My honest opinion is that if an agency working to ensure that the TFW is legitimate and the employer is viable, then the agency, immigration or employment, should be asking directly, or if they feel that they have to send it through the applicant in the Philippines, at least CC me on it so that I can respond. This almost caused a dismissal of the whole application after some 14 to 16 months. It's thanks to a particular individual's intervention we managed to get the embassy to reinstitute the application. Fourth and last, if a situation arises where the TFW is here in Canada and in the employ of an elder person passes away, the TFW is severely disadvantaged, particularly in the last year. The changes that were brought in, I believe, in August of 2015, changing from in-home, in-care living attendant with the caregiver living, of course, in the elder carer's home. Suddenly that person is faced with the need to provide a new employment, a new LMIA, no longer the LMO process, and all the commensurate delays and such that go with that. My feeling is that the TFW, when they enter Canada with an LMO or now LMI contract in hand, that contract should be extended, or they should be allowed to extend that contract. The changes that were brought in August of 2015 have driven the economy of TFW elder care virtually underground because of the in-home care live-in, and the increase in wages have made it virtually impossible for elderly people to support, and it does not make it any attractive for the TFW to live out at an increase of $5 per hour. I just don't find that is a fair and equitable way to deal with a TFW who has come to the country under what I view as a three-way contract between the elder care person, or in my case, I was acting as a power of attorney, the TFW themselves, and in fact the Government of Canada, because the government does act as the agent vetting, if you will, the LMO, LMIA process, and it is, in fact, a Government of Canada form that we're filling out. So I feel it's a three-way contract, and because of one party being deceased, should not cause that particular contract to be void. The intent of the TFW program, particularly for elder care, I believe, is to provide quality in-home care for our elderly who wish to stay at home and be less of a burden to the taxpayer. If they can support themselves and support a temporary foreign worker in-home caregiver, then we have extended their quality of life. And after all, we're talking about people who have given to Canada in forming the fabric of our country. I think we should examine how we can make that more useful for the TFW and the elderly. Thank you for seeking my thoughts.
Thank you very much, sir. We are also now joined by Mr. Robert Watson, President and Chief Executive Officer of Information Technology Association of Canada. Welcome, sir. Thank you. And do we have... Just getting them on. Okay, so we're going to move. We're going to keep moving forward here. We do have a third witness via video conference, just trying to reconnect with her. Mr. Watson, the floor is yours for 7 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you. I do apologize for being late, but security is security, and you don't shortcut that. My name is Robert Watson. I've actually graduated from Ryerson Polytechnical Institute when it was still a Polytechnical Institute 40 years ago this month. So I've been in the business for quite a long time and involved in a couple of industry sectors. I've been in mostly communications industry most of my career. However, had the enjoyment of running a power utility for the province of Saskatchewan also. I'm here to represent ITAC. ITAC is a national organization that represents over 300 members that are made up of Canadian and Canadian-owned, foreign-owned companies, large-scale, single-size companies and everything. So we are the voice of the ICT sector in Canada. We are a unique sector in that we contribute over $70 billion to the national GDP in Canada, and we generate directly or indirectly 1 million jobs in Canada and invest over $4.8 billion annually in R&D, more than any other private sector in Canada. ICT is also broadening it to encompass more traditional sectors in that almost every sector, and in fact every sector, industry sector in Canada has ICT involvement and is dramatically changing their sectors. We'd like to thank for being for here today, and we want to talk about the highly skilled workers in the TFW program. My sector faces enormous skills gaps and labor shortages. ICTC estimates by 2020 there will be more than 200,000 unfilled jobs in ICT. These are high-paying jobs with an average income of $71,000, and these will come from the backbone of our knowledge-based economy. Canadian colleges and universities produce great students, and ICT companies in Canada predominantly hire these young graduates. My organization is doing its part to help train Canadians to fill these jobs. We presently run 2 programs which have been incredibly successful. The first called Career MASH, and it targets its high school students. The program inspires students to go to the ICT and helps them realize connection points between technology and health, the arts, and other disciplines. Career MASH produces inspired students who are well-rounded and ready to pursue post-secondary training in the ICT sector. We also run Business Technology Management, BTM, program, which targets post-secondary students and provides them with technology and business skills. This program has a placement rate of over 90% and exists due to the generous contributions of the federal government and private sector. ICT companies in Canada are eager to hire locally and will invest programs like BTM to ensure steady supply of talent. However, despite these efforts, Canada does not produce the talent that we need. This is where we need foreign temporary workers. To be clear, hiring foreign temporary workers in our industry is more expensive and less convenient than hiring locals. Temporary foreign workers do not take the job of local Canadians in our industry. They fulfill crucial gaps which will allow our companies to grow and hire more Canadians. We look to TFW predominantly for special projects and training, particularly. For example, if there is a malfunction with an advanced 3D printer, there may only be a handful of engineers in the world capable of fixing it. Another example is IoT, Internet of Things. There is no 10 years experience of Internet of Things anywhere in the world right now. So if we want to get the expertise in Canada or have the expertise flow out of Canada, there has to be movement of personnel. They also come and train Canadians from outside, do particular projects, and create new products. The ability to train and mentor in particular is important to Canadian ICT companies looking to scale. They have to scale in order to be part of the worldwide. Earlier this year, one of the founders of BlackBerry, Mike Lazaridis, released a white paper called Scaling Success. He interviewed over 125 top ICT companies to identify barriers to growth and found the lack of executive and management level talent was a major inhibitor to growth. Canada does not have a lot of talent at this level because we don't tend to produce large companies. One of the ways to address this gap is to help Canadian companies to scale is to bring in foreign talent. What I'd really like to emphasize here is that's why temporary foreign workers, which is my industry, which my industry need and are highly skilled and in short supply. If Canada cannot find a way to access foreign talent easier, we risk of hindering the ITC sector and delaying growth and technological advancement with other sectors of the economy as well. For this reason, I'd like to make the following observation and recommendation. Canada needs to revamp the National Occupational Code. These codes provide key data about employment within our industry. Currently, they are outdated and a number of discrete professions end up being pigeonholed into broader categories. What makes it harder for Canada to pinpoint vacancies within the workforce where programs should be developed, and it leads to increased rejections when companies apply for TFWs. Updating these codes, therefore, would have a dual benefit of helping to train domestic workers and also facilitating short-term solutions to access TFWs. I'd also like to recommend the creation of service standards for processing applications. Some of these applications take over 6 months for delay, and in our industry, you need to make decisions within days or hours. These delays can cause Canadian companies to lose clients or mandates to foreign competitors. Our industry is not overly concerned when the application's fees were increased, but they'd like faster turnarounds. ICT companies are domestically and globally very competitive. The requirement that we disclose salary publicly when we advertise the LMIA, the Labor Market Impact Assessment, therefore putting off companies. It is a very competitive industry. They can be easily difficult for smaller companies who cannot always match the large international salaries. This is why I'd like to recommend the exempt ICT from having to disclose salaries in the Labor Market Impact Assessment. Clarify the definition of specialized knowledge. This phrase appears to be international mobility and TFW programs, but there is no set definition. I recommend that we create a clear definition based on several factors: training, education, work experience, and salary. This will make application process more predictable for companies applying. Finally, I'd like to essentially ask for two things from this committee. First, I'd like to recommend that Employment and Social Development Canada and Statistics Canada be more granular with its information. We need more granular information. We cannot prepare students for workforce of tomorrow if we not closely monitor labor patterns. Improved foresight in this area will help university, colleges, and private groups such as BTM and Career Match tailor their programs in turn to decrease the reliance on TFWs. We need the data more granular. Secondly, I'd like to ask this committee to consider restoring pre-existing sectoral exemption for the ICT sector. Given the severity of our skills gap and the global competition that surrounds TFWs, this will allow our industry to grow. If sectoral exemptors are not feasible, then perhaps a trusted employer program could be considered. In conclusion, I represent the interests with significant skills gap and is highly trained and highly motivated personnel. We need the government to collect more data about ICT labor markets and exempt the ICT sector from the labor market analysis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Now, I understand we have a representative from the Caregivers Action Centre. Unfortunately, Teda Bayan, who we had previously here, had been offered to come back, was not able to come back Monday, apparently was not able to come back today either. But we do have Marcia Barrett from the Caregivers Action Centre that has joined us. Thank you very much for stepping up and stepping in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thank you very much for attending, and you have 7 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening. Again, my name is Marshazen Sheldon McKenzie, who was 39 years old when he was injured and died at 40. Sheldon was a loving and devoted father of 2 teen daughters. He began to work as a migrant for 13 years in Canada to care for his family. Sheldon loved to play soccer, loves music, also coached the game. Sheldon was injured on January 26, 2015, died September 17, 2015, on his youngest daughter's birthday. It was during this time of Sheldon's injury and death that I became aware of the frustration and the difficult conditions that the migrant farm workers were. On top of the injury and death that traumatized our family, the policies that are in place was a source of frustration that we endured during that time. Things we have to endure was the fear of repatriation, his permit running out, lack of medical coverage, his family's finance support, realizing that there is no proper policies in place to take care of these workers that contribute greatly to the Canadian market was quite the surprise. The horrible condition that they have to endure was anything that we ever thought happened right here in Canada. Some of the horrible conditions we had to endure, and this was during the time in Ontario while we were looking after Sheldon and having the opportunity to talk to other migrant workers who live in constant fear. They're afraid that if they speak up about the working conditions that they have to endure, they would be repatriated. Not only that, they would never be called back to work. Some of them, this is the only way for them to take care of their families. They're hard-working men and women who came here to contribute to Canada taking care of their families. They're working hours, they're asked to work hours that I don't think we subject even a farm animal to work those kind of hours. Oftentimes, as a family member that was present, I wondered if there were proper policies in place. Would we suffer the loss of a loved one by a preventable accident, injury and death? Training. Was there training? That's a question that we're left with all the time. The runners that he was wearing in a greenhouse that is sweaty, the plastic on the floor that is wet. Is there a policy in place for proper training? I've talked to men who has fallen off of tractors, hurt themselves. They were repatriated with no health care. They're back in their countries with nothing. they were injured here, yet they're sent home with nothing. These horrible conditions have to change. The history of the workers that are sent back is numerous. Just heading back to one country, Jamaica, talking to wives and girlfriends of past migrant farm workers who was injured here in Canada and sent back to Jamaica. They're sitting there no longer able to work and with no support. This is hard to grasp, knowing the stand that Canada takes on issues, that these conditions and these things are allowed to happen. Also, it was during this time that I found out that these workers are tied into one employer, and whether that employer is treating them well or not, they have to endure those horrible conditions because if they complain, they cannot change. Their permit is tied to one employer. They cannot change that permit. They can't go to another job. For them to continue to care for their family, they have to endure horrible abuse. I've spoken to a group in British Columbia. They weren't allowed to go use the bathroom because it takes time. It's condition and things like this that I hear over and over again that have me speaking up today. I cannot get my cousin back. His daughter will never celebrate a birthday ever again. The reason for me sitting here before this committee as a family member, as fathers, as brothers, that is sitting there, I need you to review the policies that is in place for migrant workers. The policies forces them to endure things that nobody should be able to endure. No one. The label that I often hear describe migrant workers are low skill. Low skill does not mean low value or lower human rights. I am not asking this committee to dismantle the program. The program has been a great benefit to my cousin's family and to many families that are to work. I'm asking the committee to get rid of some of the things in the program that causes these migrant workers to not have access to proper health care, benefits, proper teachings, and proper working conditions that regular Canadians have. I'm asking this committee to things in the program that causes for 9 months, the worst 9 months of my life, living under the constant fear that my cousin, who was lying in an hospital bed with a head injury, was going to run out of health care and was back to his country, that do not have the facility or the medical capability to take care of him. The torture of watching him, a young man stronger than I am, lie there, not able to do anything. On top of that, the worst torture was sitting every day wondering, when I turn my back, will he be shipped out? What him? That's constant fear. Will his medical be cut off? Will he be sent home? They're left alone. The families are left alone. We have no resource. I had no resource to turn to in making sure that he got the proper medical care and that the permit is not tied into the medical benefit that run out. when the permit runs out. He's injured. He should have the same opportunity as any Canadian to get proper medical care.
Thank you, Ms.
Again, I'm stating emphatically, I'm not asking the committee to get rid of the program. I am asking the committee to review the program and the actions to protect the migrant workers and their families.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barrett. I appreciate your testimony today. We will jump right into questions. First up is Mr. Warawa.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses sharing their valuable time with us today. Mr. Webster, thank you for being with us. I got to know you and your mother, Muriel. Very happy that she reached the ripe age of over 100 years of age, and she was, your whole family was very respected family in our community, but she had roots here in Ottawa. I believe it was mid-60s. She was actually in charge of the Canadian Cancer Clinic in Ottawa. She was a very well-respected nurse and radiologist, and then the family moved out to Langley, where we were happy to have you as a family live and grow up. But we're here today to talk about a temporary foreign worker program and changes that were needed. You shared, Mr. Webster, that your process that you went through to get your mother a live-in care provider in-home, that it took 14 to 16 months, and then you had to ask to get your application reinstated, and the total process took 21 months. We had an official from Immigration Canada here on Monday, 2 days ago, and we were told the process takes 56 days, yet you shared it was 14 to 16 months and then became 21 months. So it's a huge discrepancy between 56 days and 21 months. I ask, and the government's considering having those that apply and qualify for TFW after LMIA, that they would then immediately get permanent resident status to deal with the issues of not being well cared for, that we've heard some very, very sad stories. Even now, we've just heard a very sad story. So we heard that the process for getting permanent resident status is, according to Immigration Canada, about a 6-month process as opposed to a 56-day process because you have to go into more detail for permanent resident status. But the government now considering permanent resident status coming with the TFW approval. Then the big question is it going to take longer to get a TFW, or is the process going to be streamlined so we're not screening adequately? So if you could comment in the real, if the government was to actually move ahead and when you get approved for a TFW and it comes with a permanent resident status, what do you think of that idea? Will it slow the process down or speed the process up? And in your case, you showed incredible compassion and care, particularly to the women that had worked and cared for your mother, Muriel. And even after her death, you treated them like family members to make sure that they were taken care of, even with accommodation. So how do we make sure that we create a system that protects TFWs and to avoid some of the very sad stories that we've heard? And you're a prime example of how it's done right. So if you could comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wara. Just to address the 21 versus 56-day issue, if you will. At the start of the process, I initiated the LMO process in February of 2013 after having read all the documents and such on the website. And at that time, you had to advertise for the job position for 3 months. There was an error between myself and the advertising BC in Abbotsford. In fact, the job should have been advertised, I believe, in Langley, so that cost me 3 months. My fault. Jobs BC, understanding what it was. The process in August of 2013, I believe it was, changed somewhat, the LMO process, and it changed, in fact, by the government trying to be a cost recovery system. So there was an additional page to the LMO, which demanded payment of $750, and apparently was sufficient for the government to restart all LMO processes which had not been submitted by July 31st. If your submission was received August 1st, you were supposedly out of luck. So again, it took some assistance from I believe at the time. I contacted the minister in Ottawa, and the minister, I believe, may have suggested that my suggestion was correct, that there should be some sort of a weighing in period, if you will, that it shouldn't be a 11:59, 12:01 clock-driven change of process. So there was a number of things that caused particular application, the LMO process, to be delayed. However, to answer your question, granting permanent residency with the TFW, I don't particularly see that as being terrifically advantageous. A lot of the TFWs wish to have permanent residency, but they're willing to serve the 24-month probationary period, if you will, within 38-month calendar year to achieve their PR. The problem with the PR process, as I see it now, and I know from two examples firsthand, the one lady, it took 39 months from the time of her arrival in Canada before she was granted PR. The other lady, I believe, was 46 months. It's a question, I think, I actually heard it from the gentleman who was speaking from the ITC Corporation situation. The time is onerous. The time is onerous for anybody trying to get temporary foreign workers in. From the IT perspective, it's critical. From their business perspective, from a caregiver, an elder caregiver, it's crucial because we don't want to hire a TFW to come to a funeral. We want to hire that TFW to come and provide elder care, which, as you know, Mr. Warwa, was the objective.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Over to Mr. Long, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our presenters this afternoon. I listened with great interest to the presentations today, earlier in the week, and obviously in previous weeks. And it's a heavy load, I think, that the committee has to come up with the right framework, formula, if you will, on TFWs. And, we certainly hear and recognize there's atrocities and very, very bad stories and situations out there that have happened and, continue to happen. On the other side of that coin, we see examples from, ITC, video game industry, Maple Leaf Foods and Brandon, and, other situations or industries that, really need temporary foreign workers to sustain. So, we're here to try to find solutions and to come up with the right framework going forward. And, I can ask you lots of questions about your industry and things like that, but I think I'm going to start, Mr. Watson, just, with respect to the ITC and talk about your industry's efforts to recruit, retrain, and attract Canadian workers. Because, obviously the first thing we want to do is hire Canadian workers first, if possible. So can you just kind of elaborate a little bit on what you've done and your industry has done to, again, recruit, retain, and attract new Canadian workers?
Yes, thank you very much. And ITAC, which is the Information Technology Association Canada, does go from coast to coast. We have relationships with all the major institutions across Canada, colleges, university. As I say, Career MASH is down into the high school level now. We have a program, Business Technology Management Program, that is now a degree program now that we're working with the institutions on and literally trying to get that in every school, post-secondary school we can.
So is it community college or is it university?
It's university level. We also have community colleges that we have the program.
A degree or
it's
is it?
A degree, yes.
A degree in?
business technology management, IT courses on the more on the business side. It's not a course that gives you source code programming
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It gives you the business of
Okay,
technology.
I'll let you continue.
Right.
Yep.
We just have, and in fact, on June the 16th, we kick off our new program, Women on Boards in the ICT industry, where we specifically have a program where we're encouraging women to apply for boards and get on IT boards. In other words, we want to balance the gender thing. And in fact, in the ICT industry, we're getting we have more males in that industry than we do females. So we have a program where we want to start encouraging more women to get into the ICT industry in Canada.
How are you doing that?
Well, we're started with the inaugural kickoff event is June the 16th,
Okay.
where we're encouraging women to get on boards, and we have a participation from all our members on that.
Okay.
So that starts to start at the top level to see that we can do it that way.
Right.
We continually have seminars, we continually have conferences, we continually promote it for the ICT industry. One of the other things that's a bit of a challenge is, quite frankly, is the young kids of any age, quite frankly, but mostly very young. And it doesn't matter gender or wherever in the world they're from, they are inquisitive. They go off and do things, and they will go and do applications, build their own little applications and stuff like that. Somehow we've got to bring them forward and bring them out and encourage that. So we're a program. We're involved in almost every aspect. Then we have members that are one-person members, all the way up to the large Canadian corporations to the large international corporations.
So what kind of success are you having with respect to that? Like,
Well,
what's your opinion?
Sorry, I interrupt. Success we're having, we actually, as I say, hire all 90% of all ICT students graduating in Canada now are hired for in Canada. The success also is we have Canadian companies. And we have foreign-owned Canadian companies that are setting up centers of excellence here in Canada. Software centers of excellence, a spectrum center of excellence, network center of excellence, application center of excellence that are being set up in Canada. And when you set up these center of excellence, you've got to react. You've got to be quick, because the technology changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're a company in Canada that's developing to scale to get outside of Canada, or a company that's in Canada, a foreign company, and you want to bring center of people together, and it's not permanent employee, because permanent employee bringing to Canada, they can handle that. That's a process that we want to bring somebody to live here and work here. That's a different process than bringing somebody in to do a project for a year, 2 years, or something like that, or to help out with a software issue or something like that. And also, if you build those centers of excellence up in Canada, we will be doing the same going elsewhere. So the free trade agreements become part of the whole scenario of how we can not only have products moving back and forth, we can have people going and taking our expertise elsewhere.
How many temporary foreign workers would you need? Does the industry need?
That's a good
about 30
question. Now,
seconds.
ICT is coming out with a report. It's coming out a report at the end of the month that will give us more information around that. But
So-
sorry, I'm trying to answer your question. It is a very fluid number, right?
Roughly.
Chiffre, en fait, le nombre.
We have 70,000 unfilled jobs now, and it's getting to 200,000 unfilled jobs in the future. Temporary workers, and it allows, if in fact corporations can have a set time frame, or actually even be exempt for now's the time. I mean, the new technologies coming out now, worldwide technologies coming out now, is, we mentioned it before, 3D printers. 5G is a worldwide technology, and we've got members, now some of our members want to develop that in Canada.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Sorry, I've got to cut you guys off. Over to Ms. Ashton, please.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for joining us here today. I would like to direct my questions to you, Ms. Barrett, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on such short notice and for sharing the tragic story of Sheldon and your loved one, and a story that also was broadcasted, of course, nationally, and I know touched the hearts of many Canadians. And and I think you touched on it as well. You know, many Canadians in seeing that story asked, how is this possible in Canada? How is it that somebody, a worker in Canada, no matter where they're from, how can they be treated in such a way? And how can we treat somebody that does that kind of work in such a way? And I did want to also note that stories like those of Sheldon were shared very powerfully as part of a film that was shown here on Parliament Hill called Migrant Dreams, and I think it was really the ability to hear directly from migrant workers themselves is something that our committee here obviously has not done enough of, but I would encourage all the members of the committee and those that are tuning in to watch this film, to hear those stories, and of course today to the ability to hear from yourself about what Sheldon went through and how Sheldon was treated also must give us, we must take it very seriously and take the recommendations you're putting forward very seriously as well. I did want to touch on the fact that the battle that you had to keep Sheldon in Canada because he didn't have access to health care, and that there was a constant threat to deport him. And there has been some studies on those acts of deportation. You obviously also spoke of people that are back in Jamaica that were deported after their injuries on the job. And I'm wondering if you can speak to us as to how unacceptable that lack of coverage and support is for those that are injured on the job.
I'm a Canadian citizen. I came to Canada, and so I believe I have an advantage in knowing some things about how things work here. And for me, it was impossible to find the proper place to seek help when we ran into issues. Now, moreover, for a migrant worker who have no family here and is basically relying on what the employer is telling them and what the liaisons are telling them. And for most of the workers that I speak to that is back in their country with no health care, they were promised when they get there they would be looked after. Some of them were told, here is a certain amount of money, go back home and we will send you money, we will do. They are waiting to this day with no resource. For myself, I had to go to legal aid. I had to try and get lawyers in place to assist me in Sheldon's immigration humanitarian stay, for him to stay here to continue to get health care. When I first showed up in Windsor, I was not told immediately that he slipped and fell at work. I was left with that he had a stroke. It took a lot of digging. It took a lot of investigating on my part and my husband's part to find out exactly what happened to him. From there, the constant threat of repatriation from the liaison, it began very friendly. We will put him in a medevac and we will send him home and he will get proper health care. I've been away from my country for a long time, but I happen to know that there is not such a thing. And so when I started to say, no, he needs to stay here and receive proper health care, they would not release his passport. So I could work to the lawyers for the humanitarian visa to be taken care of. The liaisons hold on to his passport. As a family member, I hired a lawyer. I had power of attorney at the time to get the passport. It still was not released to me. After his death, I still had to fight to get the passport to repatriate his body back to Jamaica for burial. This is happening with nothing in place for family or the workers themselves to go to, because if they talk to those who are in charge of them, they will not be able to come back. And this is, some of them, the only way to really take care of their families. No matter how horrible the job condition is, they are working hard to care for their families. And so they will put up with anything, money, to take care of their families. The problem that I have is, this is not Canada that I know, but maybe I've been living under a bubble and being blind to a lot of things. This is not what we know of where human rights are concerned, and we have failed these people miserably. I think probably because the perception is they're coming here and they're taking jobs from Canadian. I think that is far from the truth. They are doing jobs that regular Canadians do not want to do.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
They need to put in place where their permits is not tied in to their medical. Their permits is not tied into how they're cared for.
Thank you very much. We need to move on. Ms. Tassi, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. As well, thank you to all witnesses for your input today. Ms. Barrett, if I could just follow up with your comments and start by saying that I'm very sorry for your personal tragedy. And I listen to what you're saying, if I were to ask you what recommendations, other than what you've spoken about in terms of what you've been through, 2 or 3 recommendations, specific and direct, to improve the temporary foreign worker system, what would you offer? What would you say?
Do not tie their permits to their medical benefits, because once their permit ran out, their medical benefits is cut off. That's number one. Number two, the fear of repatriation. There has to be something in place when they get sick on the job here or get injured on the job here, that they're tapped into regular health care immediately. Whether it's compensation, that is taken care of immediately. They pay into EI, and I know a lot of them do not get EI benefits. That needs to change. Their permit is also tied into one employer, which means that if it is awful, they cannot complain because they have no other resource. I don't think it should be tied in. If they are facing an employer that is abusing them, they should have the right to change jobs.
Okay, thank you. In addition to that, with respect to the reporting of abuses, anything you'd like to say there with respect to if a temporary foreign worker is facing a situation where they feel they're not being treated properly? Any advice there for us?
Obviously, and what I run into, I can't speak. I've heard other people's experience, but speaking from my experience, the liaison service that is in place is not working. Because from what I understand, they are there to make sure that the rights of are protected. It is not. I found most of my battles, most of the injustice, most of the fear of the workers was against the liaison workers, because when they complained to them, many of them said if they complain to even the liaison worker, they go back to the bosses and tell them, and then they're not welcome back. So for me, from my experience, I felt more like the liaison workers were working for the boss more than they were working for the actual migrant workers. There needs to be a system in place where there's safe reporting, there's proper investigation. And it's not to, I'm sure probably each country have a liaison that works with these workers. It's not just leave up to them, because what I encounter was they're in Canada, but they're an entity all by themselves. They were untouchable. Nothing I said, nothing I wanted for my cousin mattered. They had the power and they could do whatever they want. That should never happen here. There should be a system where maybe somebody in the Canadian labor market is governing over this, that have, I guess, separate interests where these workers can safely report and is protected and looked after.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Watson, if I could direct the next couple of questions to you. I know you gave us some numbers, so can you just clarify what percentage of workers in your industry now are currently temporary foreign workers?
Yeah, we don't have a figure right now.
Okay.
That the report is coming out at the end of the month.
Okay. And do you see this as a long-term labor need or a short-term labor need?
No, we clearly see this as a long-term labor need because it's not just workers that are required to actually do source code or develop a product. It's workers that are needed to help a hospital convert its IT system, or a power company convert its IT system, or somebody develop a new system for renewable energies to coordinate the power coming from windmills and something like that. Every sector is going through massive changes on the IT side.
Yeah. And so with respect to your efforts in terms of education and trying to get educating Canadians, you don't think that with making the full efforts that you are there, that would be sufficient to meet the needs in the future?
No, well, to answer your question, first of all, we have to do more to help with the students coming through the system.
Right.
Not only get more students to go into the IT sector, but get more than just young guys going into the IT sector, all diversity particularly, that we have to do. But no, if we even got more than our fair share coming through the Canadian system, if we want to start scaling Canadian companies up, or have international companies set up centers of excellence here, you've got to have more workers. I mean, it's a matter of size, and it's not a matter of our industry of saying that, okay, well, have them come here. If they don't come here, they'll not only go elsewhere, or they can just sit here and by fiber optics develop the product somewhere else. Right. You have to allow them to come here and not only train, but osmosis. Work with Canadians here to train them and teach them of what's going on.
Okay, and is your industry using the pathways to permanent residency that are already in place?
Very briefly, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
That was a brief answer.
Yeah.
I will take that as the answer. Thank you. Yes.
One quick thing for Mr. Watson. Can we get that report? Can you send us that report you're talking about?
Yeah, it's not our report. It's a third-party report,
Yeah.
but we'll get it for you for sure.
Thank you.
Seeing that we are at the bottom of the hour, I would like to thank this panel, the witnesses, for being here today and joining us and sharing their experiences. Thank you, Mr. Watson, Mr. Webster, and Ms. Barrett. We really appreciate all of your input. We will be suspending for very brief 3 minutes, we'll say 3 minutes, to get the next panel ready to go, and we'll come back. Thank you. you. If we can just come to order, please. As people are getting settled, just a couple housekeeping things. We do have votes this evening. The bells, I believe, are going to start at 5:15, at which point I will ask for unanimous consent to continue. I imagine we'll all want to get out of here no later than 5:30, and that brings us to the end of this particular panel. Let's see here. First of all, thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. I would like to just first of all make sure everybody is here. We're missing a few, I see. So we have from High Life, Jeremy Jansen, Senior Director of Human Resources, and is it Barabel Langier? Langner.
Yes,
Okay.
good afternoon.
I tried to get fancy there. Sorry. In-house legal counsel for immigration. We also have, yes, we do. We have from the Canadian Agriculture Human Resources Council, Portia McDonald-Durst, Executive Director. And from the Agriculture and Agri-Food Labour Task Force, Mark Wales, Labour Task Force and Agriculture. And from the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Canada, we have Claudia Colcho? Close? Okay. And Naveen Mahada, General Counsel, Director of Human Rights, Equity and Diversity. Welcome to each of you. I will start our 7-minute presentations. Is it, Jeremy, are you going to speak? Excellent. 7 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the HUMA committee to having us out here, and thank you especially to be looking at this very, very important issue and this very, very important program. I'm here with my colleague, and Barabel is for our company, she's our legal counsel immigration. She has lots of great things to say, so I think we're sharing 7 minutes. So if someone can cut me off, give me 4 and give her 3, that would be great. So just give me the indication, please.
4.
Excellent. Sounds good. So thanks again. We've provided some submissions for you, so there's some PowerPoints. I'm not going to follow the PowerPoint. There's a letter there from a former mayor, from the community where we're operating in, and some other documents. So please do take the time. They're good documents. They support what I'm going to be sharing and what Barabel and the other folks here are going to be sharing. So I want to talk a little bit about our organization. But before I do that, I was at a baseball game the other day, my son's ball game. He's a young guy, and the president of our organization was there. And so we sat beside each other, and he said he was at a meeting. We're in Manitoba. We're based out of rural Manitoba, and he was at a meeting in Calgary, and he was also presenting before a government group. And then they followed up with him after that meeting and said, like, what's your number one thing right now at High Life? He said the number one thing is that we can continue to access workers from overseas. We have a lot of number one things, but that's the number one of the number one. So just to say, this is our number one issue as an organization as far as government programs that help us operate. So let me get to that. So our story is we started in 1994. A bunch of farmers in southeast Manitoba got together and said, let's build a hog barn. So they built that hog barn, employed about 10 people. Fast forward to today, we're at about 1,800 people, about 1,850. We're throughout Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and North Dakota. And we didn't rely significantly on the temporary foreign worker program until about 2008. And 2008 was when we moved from being farmers to being people that make food. So we raised the pigs, but we sold our hogs to companies like Maple Leaf and other food processors who processed our pigs for us. And then we decided we wanted to be fully integrated. Our vision statement is to be the best Canadian food company in the world. So to be the best Canadian food company, you have to be a food company. So we needed to buy a food processing plant or build one. So we bought one, and there was a food processing plant in Neepawa, Manitoba. We bought the plant. At the time, that plant had 300 employees. And we needed that plant to process all of the hogs that we produce. We produce about 1.7 million hogs a year. And with the footprint of the plant and the numbers of people at the plant, they could not process all of those hogs. We needed to add essentially about 800 folks to that plant. The town of Neepawa is 3,000 people, was 3,000 people at the time. And so we did scour all of Neepawa for skilled meat cutters and folks to work in our plant. That's the primary processing position that we need to fill at the plant, is the meat cutter position. We scoured the east coast of Canada. We hired some lobster farmers. We hired mushroom farmers from Ontario. We hired construction workers from Alberta. We hired all kinds of folks from all kinds of places. Did we find 800 people? No, we did not. So we needed to go overseas to find folks. And we looked for skilled people, minimum 2, preferably 3 or more years of experience. And at the time, this was pre-middle of 2014, so pre all the changes that happened to the temporary foreign worker program. So we still had to go through it was called the LMO process, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We had to go through that. We were fine to go through that. We open it. Yeah, go ahead. That's my signature. Okay. So I'll pass it on to Bearable, but I'm going to just quickly finish my story here. If we would go back in time, if I took you in a DeLorean time machine from Back to the Future and we went back to 2008, with the changes that have happened now, limiting us with the cap calculation, with the 1-year duration, we would not exist as an organization today. And that's not being melodramatic. There's other hog producers in the prairies that have folded their doors, and we were able to continue to operate because of people and great people and how we could access those folks locally and overseas.
And so what you have is you have a company that now employs 1,800 people in rural parts of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. It's a pretty good news story. And this is a company that is continuing to look at opportunities to expand, and primarily into the Asian market, which, as I understand, is also on the mandate of our current government in terms of increasing exports of food products. So really, the ask that we have here today is, if we'd like to fulfill that mandate of the government to continue to expand food products into the Asian market, as an example, we need the workers to be able to do that. And what Jeremy didn't get a chance to talk about is the initiatives that we are involved in very quickly with Sandy Bay, a First Nations community that is about an hour, 15 minutes from the plant in Neepawa, that we're working on with Minister Mahaichuk and a meat cutting school that's being planned for that. I know we don't have a lot of time, and that's really a challenge here, and we'd love to sit down with each and every one of you, and I know we've had the opportunity to do so with MP Kuzner. He was very gracious to listen to our story in more detail, and any of you who'd like more information, just call us. Very quickly, 1-year work permits right now, make them back to 2-year work permits. If there's any thought of permanency to any of these programs, we need to go back to the 2-year work permit, because even in Manitoba, where we have a wonderful PNP program that is processing workers who are there for 6 months and have worked successfully for 6 months, you're in a situation where you're really going to put pressure on the PNP to process them quickly enough to get them through in that year that they're there, because once they're nominated, of course, they're out of the cap, they can extend their work permits. So first and foremost, as you'll see in our PowerPoint, back to 2 years as a starting point. The other thing, the 10, 20, 30% cap, just doesn't work, I think, for most industries, but we're here to speak right now about the meat processing industry. The cap calculation is nonsense. In the materials we've provided to you, okay, I won't say it's nonsense, it's complicated. It's discretionary, it's not clear. Because you may not want to click through and look for Schedule E that does the cap calculation, I've provided it to you. And if you have a look, you'll see quickly that the cap calculation has challenges because it purports to count the workers on the floor, the ones you're asking for in the LMIA, and the folks you might have waiting to be deployed in a former LMIA. So really you're triple counting, arguably. There's a little bit of discretion in the calculation, but that's what it boils down to. So really, if we're going to go to 10%, guess what? We may be at 3%. But that's a whole discussion I'm happy to have with any of you. I do want to give kudos to the department because they've been working with me on this point. And I just met with Janet Golding again this morning, and I know Jackie Manchevsky has that under her, and they are further reviewing it. So that's good news. So the cap, I think, has to be, I will be very quick to finish up.
Please.
The cap should not exist, especially in the meat industry. A very simple solution might be to simply have the meat cutters have the same exemptions as the swine techs do, so that they would be out of the cap if there is still a desire to continue with the cap calculation. The other option, of course, is to simply move it out of this department and put it under Minister McCallum's mandate and have an LMI exemption for those industries that are found to be suitable, which we would submit based on the research the meat processing industry is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Portia McDonald Dewhurst?
Dewhurst, yes.
Dewhurst, sorry. 7 minutes, please. Thank you.
I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Ag HR Council. Thanks for inviting the Council to speak with you today about the importance of temporary foreign workers working within the ag and ag-food industry. Our testimony as part of this review is important as over 40% of all temporary foreign workers that come into Canada work within this industry. So we're a huge industry, a huge user of the program. The ag and ag-food industry, including seafood sector, is a very large and important contributor to Canada's economy and its success. It encompasses several industries, including primary agriculture, aquaculture, food and beverage processing, etc. The sector employs over 2 million Canadians and accounts for 1 in 8 jobs in Canada, or 12% of total employment. Regionally, the industry is an important source of economic activity in many provinces and contributes over $108 billion to Canada's GDP. It's a huge driver of our Canadian economy as well as our provincial economies. It's a high-impact sector with incredible growth potential as demand for Canadian food and ag products increases worldwide. A really, really important point. And although the industry is in high demand, industry stakeholders like High Life have expressed significant concern about the immediate labor challenges facing the industry and businesses within the industry and the risks to their viability and growth into the future. The industry needs workers to remain globally competitive, to take advantage of export opportunities, and to ensure the security, safety, and sustainability of food for all Canadians. Based on extensive labor market information research with industry, the Canadian Ag HR Council has clarified the labor shortage situation and its impacts for the primary agriculture side of the industry. 10 years ago, the gap between the demand for workers and worker supply was approximately 30,000 workers. Today, that gap is 59,000 workers, which means it's nearly doubled in 10 years. And based on increasing demand both domestically and internationally for Canada's food and ag products, the estimate is expected to double again in the next 10 years to 114 workers by 2025. Although employers are expending extensive efforts to recruit and hire workers, Canadians are less available in rural areas and less interested in ag-related occupations. The industry currently mitigates this large worker shortage by hiring temporary foreign workers. 45,600 temporary foreign workers support the agriculture industry today. These workers are accessed through the Seasonal Ag Worker Program as well as the Ag and Regular Streams, the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. Without these workers, businesses would struggle and Canadian businesses and jobs would be at risk. The use of temporary foreign workers helps alleviate the gap between available ag jobs and available workers, but it doesn't eliminate the problem. Even with the use of temporary foreign workers, there are still significant unfilled vacancies within this industry. 26,400 positions that are required to support businesses, yet can't be filled by Canadians or temporary foreign workers. Currently, the ag industry has the highest job vacancy rate of any industry in Canada, with an unfilled job vacancy rate of 7%, the national average being 1.8%. The Council's research clarifies that Canadian producers are losing $1.5 billion annually, or 3% of the industry's total farm cash receipts, due to unfilled job vacancies. The research clarifies that worker shortages are critical today, with dire consequences for business viability, industry sustainability, and future growth. When Canadians are not available, temporary foreign workers play a critically important role in meeting the needs of ag employers. Temporary foreign workers allow the sector to reduce the labor gap, particularly at seasonal peaks. Given the projected future labor gap, the need for foreign workers will grow. The Council, along with 75 other industry associations, including HighLife, support the implementation of the Agriculture and Agri-Food Workforce Action Plan, a recommendations report developed by the industry designed to address the immediate and pervasive issues of an inadequate supply of workers currently impeding businesses in Canada. The effort is guided by a National Labour Task Force and includes recommendations that are practical and essential to ensuring the safety, sustainability, and affordability of food for all Canadians, and to support Canada's continued position as a leader and significant contributor to food production for the whole world. Mark Wales, the Council Chair, will now present further information about the important role temporary foreign workers play within the sector, especially at this time when the industry is facing such significant job vacancies. He is also the co-chair of Canada's Agriculture and Agri-Food National Labour Task Force.
Thank you. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, thank you for inviting the Agriculture and Agri-Food Labour Task Force to participate in your temporary foreign worker program review. I am a farmer from Elgin County, Ontario. I'm the chair of the Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council and the co-chair of Canada's Agriculture and Agri-Food Labour Task Force. The agriculture industry is a high-impact industry that is facing very critical workforce shortages, as Portia has mentioned. Currently, the industry relies on international workers through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program to fill a portion of its vacant positions. Based on extensive research and industry consultation, improvements to accessing international workers is required for the agriculture and agri-food industry to succeed and grow. The current mechanisms of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program are restrictive and difficult to use. Industry recommends that the agriculture and agri-food industry be removed from the existing Temporary Foreign Worker Program and a new dedicated Canadian Agriculture and Agri-Food Workforce Program be created to address the unique aspects of our industry. I am pleased to share the industry's concerns and recommendations with you today to help inform you on your review. The agriculture and agri-food industry is a large and very impactful sector of the Canadian economy, contributing almost 7% to our country's GDP. It is also the key driver of most provincial economies, producing food and agricultural products that support ever-increasing demand in Canada and around the world. Unfortunately, at this time, the industry is struggling to address both a protracted and extensive labor shortage. Businesses are unable to find Canadians to work on their farms and in their processing facilities. The industry, as Portia has mentioned, has tens of thousands of vacant positions that remain unfilled, and that costs the industry billions of dollars in lost sales. As a farmer, there is nothing more discouraging than planting a crop and not having enough people available at key harvest time. That leads you to make decisions to not grow certain things. Industry stakeholders have expressed significant concern about the immediate labor challenges facing Canadian agriculture and agri-food businesses and the risk to their viability and the growth to the future. This issue is critical in affecting all aspects of the industry, including all commodities across the value chain. These shortages mean significant risk to the sector. This issue has been well researched and documented in the Canadian Agriculture and Agri-Food Workforce Action Plan and supported by the new Agriculture Labour Market Information Research that the Canadian Ag Human Resource Council has just released and Portia spoke to. The agriculture and agri-food industry has many unique workforce challenges that contribute to the current shortage. The industry, as mentioned, operates mainly in rural locations with limited availability to Canada's workforce. Jobs involve handling live animals and plants, which will perish without dedicated attention. There are seasonal aspects to the work due to Canada's climate, and the work is sometimes physical and strenuous. For these reasons, the industry struggles to meet its labor demands. Hiring Canadians is the first priority of our industry. Employers extend expensive efforts to recruit and retain Canadians. However, when Canadian workers are not available to meet the workforce requirements for the industry, international workers are sought and needed to fill vacant positions. The ag and ag-food industry uses various streams of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, including the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program, otherwise known as SOP. Commodities not on the national commodity list and processors use the main part of the temporary foreign worker program. The Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. SOP is one of the longest standing and most successful labor mobility programs in North America. Authorities from Canada and each participating country in the Caribbean and Mexico cooperate to run the program in close coordination with employers, all the while safeguarding the labor rights of employees. Current research clarifies the value of the program to Canadian businesses and to the workers who participate in the program and bring their earnings back to their home countries. Both the SOP and the agricultural stream programs have regulated wages, regulated housing, and a serious compliance regime. The Labour Task Force recommends no changes to SOP. Not all agriculture and agri-food businesses can access the SOP program, so other streams of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program are also used to fill vacant positions. The streams and rules are cumbersome and complex, yet access to international workers is essential to Canada's farmers and processors. Without foreign workers, agriculture and agri-food businesses would have too many unfilled positions and would close. Research clarifies that international workers secure Canadian jobs. Every foreign worker in the seasonal ag program creates 2 additional Canadian jobs. Every beef sector worker creates 4.2 additional Canadian jobs, and every butcher creates 6 additional Canadian timber jobs in meat processing plants. These are important statistics. When Canadian workers are not available, access to international workers is vital to meet Canada's food and agricultural production. However, the need to improve access to international workers is clear. Recent changes to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program have made things worse and resulted in extensive challenges for the industry that are constraining the ability for Canadian agriculture businesses to succeed. The industry struggles with the cumulative duration rule, which blocks Canadian-trained, uniquely skilled seasonal workers like beekeepers and grain farmers from returning to their jobs after 4 years. These are positions that businesses depend on and that they are unable to find Canadians to fill. Additionally, the 30-20-10 cap on the number of temporary foreign workers within a business is restricting operations like meat processing plants that are already facing excessive shortages. Further, there is a need to improve pathways to permanency, allowing successful foreign employees access to viable ways to become permanent residents in Canada. Businesses want to keep their workers and are supporting them in various ways, including extensive language training. However, they are unable to retain their workers when pathways to permanency are limited or non-existent for some agricultural commodities. When farms and processing plants are unable to fill positions, their ability to continue to operate is jeopardized. This is bad for business and bad for Canada. Canada's Agriculture and Agri-Food Labour Task Force has expended extensive effort reviewing and analyzing workforce issues facing all aspects of the industry. The task force is comprised of industry representatives from every aspect of the agriculture and agri-food value chain. This group has documented a solutions-oriented action plan that includes clear recommendations on much-needed improvements to securing workers for the industry. The Agriculture and Agri-Food Workforce Action Plan is backed by over 75 agriculture industry associations. I'm going to conclude because clearly we're moving on time. So Canada depends on the agriculture and agri-food industry in terms of economic activity and the valuable food and products it produces. Currently, the ability of the industry to thrive is being thwarted because there are extensive job vacancies. The Labour Task Force recommends that government partner with industry to fix the labour situation and deliver on the Canadian Agricultural and Agri-Food Workforce Action Plan to allow Canada to expand its market share and become the food supplier of choice to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on now to representatives from the United Food and Commercial Workers Union of Canada. Claudia Colocho, are you speaking? Okay, Naveen Mehta, please. 7 minutes. Thank you.
What we're going to do is I'm going to speak first. Claudia is going to speak, and then I'm just going to bring it all together. Wonderful. So, good afternoon. Chair, Vice Chairs, and members of the Standing Committee, thank you for your opportunity to present our views today on behalf of UFCW Canada. We've also provided the Standing Committee with broader written submissions. So my name is Naveen Mehta. I'm General Counsel and Director of Human Rights for UFCW Canada. So in this role, I've had the privilege and the honor of advocating for a sustainable and progressive immigration system for the last decade. And as you may know, UFCW Canada is one of the largest private sector unions in the country, with literally thousands of migrant worker members, more than any other union in Canada. So we're in a unique position where we can give you a genuine account of how our immigration system could work for the benefit of Canadians, the Canadian economy, employers, and workers. I do have the privilege of being joined to my right by Claudia Colocho, who's a member of our union and of Maple Leaf Foods in Brandon. And she's going to detail her experiences as a temporary foreign worker or a migrant worker in a unionized workplace where both the union and the employer work together to ensure the utilization of a robust provincial nominee program for almost every migrant worker member of that workplace. Claudia is here to give you a sense of what a sustainable and progressive immigration regime could look like when it comes to being aligned with labor market needs and providing a significant opportunity for permanent residency. Given the working relationship between UFCW Canada and our employers, such as Maple Leaf Meats, Olymel, High Life, who's here today, and Cargill, Claudia's story is not a sad one, as opposed to the heart-wrenching experiences of other migrant workers in non-unionized settings that you've heard over the last 2 weeks. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Claudia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudia Colocho, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today to tell you about my story with the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. I am originally from El Salvador. I came to Canada in 2005 as a temporary worker with a food processing plant in Brandon, Manitoba. As with most migrant workers, our family situation back home was not financially ideal. I live with my mother, who take care of us as a single mother. I live with my brother and my younger sister. My mother worked hard to take care of us. She worked as a secretary for many hours a day. My older brother worked as a customs agent in El Salvador, and my younger sister worked to pay for her education. I can tell you that for us, to get an education is very difficult. We both work and try to go to school before I made my way to Canada. We live in one of the poorest areas of El Salvador, and I was only able to make about $5 in a day, and my school cost about $60 per month. It was basically impossible for my sister and I to attend school. I had great aspiration of becoming a lawyer in El Salvador, but it was exceptionally difficult to make meets end. That is when the opportunity to come to Canada and work for Maple Leaf Foods arose. I came to Canada at the age of 23. I was single and I didn't have any children. I could focus on learning English and saving money to return to my country. But then I fell in love with the Canadian culture, with the Canadian people, and I fell in love with Brandon. I didn't fall in love with the winter, though. Working in a meat packing plant is not an easy job, but I worked for Maple Leaf for 4 years. First, as a meat cutter, then in sanitation, followed by a quality control in the procurement department. Determined that I would make Canada my home, I studied English at night through the courses provided by my union. And once I became a permanent resident, I work in a settlement service office. I have the privilege of helping others to make Canada their home. I cannot imagine going through this process without the immense help of my union, UFCW Canada Local 832, and my employer, Maple Leaf Foods. They provided me with the settlement services that are not available to the vast majority of migrant workers. I did not have gaps in my health care. I had decent wages and working conditions, and I was part of a bigger family. As a result of being fortunate enough to be hired into a unionized setting, I was able to join the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program. I feel I am an important part of the workplace and the community, as all people should be. I was treated with dignity and respect. Both my union and my employer invested in me, and I can now invest in Canada. Rather than being just a temporary visitor to this great country, I am now part of its fabric. I am a Canadian citizen now. I pay taxes, and more of my money stays in Canada so that I may build a life here and be part of the Canadian economy. Without the PNP programs and the support of my union and the employer, working together, I would likely not could be here speaking to you today. I wish for all workers coming to this country not to be visitors, not to be temporary workers, but to make this great country their country. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speaking to you today.
Thank you. You have about 1 minute, sir. You have about 1 minute left.
Fantastic. In closing, I'm going to ask you to review our written submissions, which detail what we see as a progressive immigration system. I also want to thank the federal government for having the courage to take the steps forward to review this desperately broken program. And this submission is part of a web of submissions. So from industry, unionized employers such as Maple Leaf and Highlight, grassroots organizations such as the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, and UFCW Canada, a prominent voice for labor on migrant workers' issues. And what we've done is we've worked together to what we see benefits Canadians, the Canadian economy, and workers. So for instance, what we did that was ingenious, in 2014, UFCW Canada and our employers negotiated a memorandum of understanding that laid out this shared understanding of a sustainable immigration regime and what it should entail. And I'm just going to quote this one little piece. And I quote, "The temporary foreign worker program has never been a coherent, strategic, or reasonable alternative to what the Canadian economy requires. An immigration regime allowing individuals with a variety of skill sets to become permanent residents and eventually citizens of Canada." That's the union and the employer talking about those two facts together. So I thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to present today. Subject to any questions you might have, those are our comments. Thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you very much. Over to Monsieur Deltel for the first question.
Much, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, be welcome in your House of Commons. Very pleased to welcome you here. D'abord, quelques mots, évidemment, dans ma langue.
First of all, a few words in my language. I'd like to welcome you, and what we're talking about here is a subject in which you've had a great deal of experience in your respective provinces, and I can tell you in Quebec we are facing exactly the same reality. We do have a number of businesses. First of all, is a question of temporary employees for harvesting foodstuffs, fruit and vegetables in particular. And we have a number of plants, processing plants, food processing plants. In the case of pork in Quebec, as you probably know, the joke is there are more hogs than citizens because the annual production is 7 million.
There is more pig in Quebec than citizen. My colleague, Mr. Kozar, is always accurate on that issue. But seriously, we face exactly the same challenges. So there is 2 points here: those who work in the farm, and those who work in the using transformation plant. So I want to get some information from you. First of all, Madame Langnier and Mr. Jensen, I would like to hear about the fact that how can you explain that we have to hire people out of Canada when we have, I know that in your city there is no unemployed. We all recognize that, 2%, so everybody's worked there, I suppose. And in your provinces, 6.4, 6.1% in Winnipeg in your provinces, so there is a good situation. But how can you explain that in Canada, where it's not all the people who are working, we have to attract people from other countries? How could you explain that in your specific area?
So you're agreeing that in our areas where we operate, that it's explainable why we would need to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
But
why we would need people outside.
How
could you explain that?
For us, for our industry, for our area? Well, I mean, you did mention, our low local population, so that's one factor. So if the town of Neepawa is 3,000 and we need 1,000 people at the plant, and they need to have a certain skill level in cutting up the meat because our customers demand it in Japan. We're in the highest end market in the world. High Life exports the largest number of kgs to Japan of any hog producer. So we need skilled meat cutters, people that know how to cut that meat, not just numbers of people. So we need people that maybe if they're from the Philippines, they're from AA or AAA plants, not just people who did some butchering in their backyard. And those people, unfortunately, are not available. So that's one factor. The low unemployment, you mentioned the 2.4%. So there's just not a lot of local available people. That's a factor. the simple fact of turnover rate. So even if you're not growing your plant, so I told the story of how we were growing our plant from 300 to 1,200, but even just to maintain turnover rate, we have the industry low turnover rate of 10%. Industry average is 25%. So let's say we went to 25%, we'd need 250 folks per year. And we wouldn't get that locally in that area and even throughout Canada.
But why don't you think to attract people like in Alberta? There's a lot of people who are losing their job. So how can you can't attract people from Alberta and you have to go offshore to attract people?
So we also go to Alberta for job fairs every year. We were there this year in the last few months, and we aggressively look for folks that are willing to move and transfer over, and we open our doors up and we don't get applicants for that.
And the results are not good?
The reasons
result of what you're doing?
No, we haven't ever, in the last couple of years, like we hired some construction workers from Alberta back when we were double shifting our plant, and there we managed to hire a few, but it's interesting, we hired construction workers from Alberta, but not people from our industry. So again, they didn't have the skills we were looking for, but we needed folks, so we did so. But we had a job fair this last weekend in Winnipeg, which is 2 hours away from our plant, and met with an organization that's facilitating the movement of permanent resident immigrants from different parts of the world who are already here in Canada, and said, come work for us. We're ready for this. We've connected with the provincial nominee program and their various settlement offices throughout Manitoba to say, if there's Syrian folks that eventually get to rural parts of Manitoba, please meet with us, and we're opening our doors to that as well.
So I will get back to my first question. How can you explain that Canadians don't want to work in your plant?
Well, I think you had a similar answer on Monday, which maybe I'll give you today from one of the witnesses. The challenge that we have is that folks are not moving from other parts of Canada to rural parts of Manitoba to process meat and to cut up pigs. And we invite you to come to our plant and have a look. We'll give you a tour. You can see the reality of the work that it is. And that's it. There's no other answer. The answer is very simple. People are not coming to rural Manitoba to process pigs. There you have it. It's not an attractive, sexy thing to do.
This is the short answer.
Unfortunately.
The work is tough,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of tough jobs, and I don't always believe that's the full answer. I think because there's lots of different things you can do on the floor. There's sanitation, there's quality, there's cutting meat, so there's putting boxes together. But is it the coolest thing for our parents encouraging their kids to get into meat processing? But I think getting you to the plant, you'd see that there are great jobs there, but that mindset isn't pervasive in the typical youth of today, saying they want to grow up to be a meat cutter, even though you can make $21 an hour in our collective bargaining agreement, plus $1 attendance, plus great benefits and all this stuff. But it's just not in people's mindset to come and do that kind of work for the most part.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we do have to move on, Monsieur. I believe we are going to Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the presenters. I, too, used to work in a meat processing plant as a meat cutter. I used to work for Canada Packers, and I also was in the aquaculture industry in processing and marketing. There's no question here that, you all are really speaking with one voice. And, like I said to the witnesses before, there's certainly examples of atrocities and abuses of the system. And then, there's examples of, what is needed and, the potential, downside to not having temporary foreign workers. So I think I'll start with Ms. McDonald-Dewhurst. And just, can you elaborate on, what... You're welcome.
I haven't started yet.
You're welcome.
Bravo.
Thank you very much.
And the crowd went wild.
But can you just give me, we're short of time here, so I'll dive right back in, but can you just give me an overview of what will happen to the industry, in your opinion, over the next 5 years if you don't get what you need for temporary foreign workers?
What the industry is experiencing today is a contraction. We know that the industry in agriculture has lost $1.5 billion in sales. That's the agriculture side of the agri-food industry, this huge driver of our economy.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick.
It's already contracted.
If you don't mind. But is the industry limited by, is it a market mechanism, is it availability, or is it simply as easy as, because, you know, I'm good friends with Scott McCain, and I wasn't in the Brandon plant, but we drove by it on the way to the Memorial Cup. But is it just, if you have capacity, like if you have more temporary foreign workers, you can process more hogs, it's that simple?
It's that simple. The industry is poised for growth. There's great potential in this industry. It can be as big as we want it to be, but right now it is being constrained. It is the #1 risk to business success, never mind expansion. #1 risk to business success is this labor shortage, unfilled vacancies. If you go to the meat processing plants, you will see hundreds of stations that sit empty. They cannot find people to work in those positions. Those plants and farms across Canada are in rural settings, and where does our population live? It's in the urban centers.
Can you put a number on just what you think would be lost in jobs and in dollars?
So right now we know $1.5 billion in lost sales in the agriculture side alone.
$1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion. Annually in lost revenues for the agriculture side of the agri-food industry. That is an incredible contraction of the industry, where the industry is at risk, critical risk at this point in time.
Okay. Again, you know, we really appreciate you coming in, and we're here for your opinion. So I'm going to focus right back to you, Ms. McDonald-Dorst. Is, you know, again, knowing that, you know, it's not one size fits all. You can't just cookie cutter this across the country. But if you were the Minister of Employment and Labor, what would you do to fix this? Just give me your opinion.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because the industry has come together to sort that answer out.
Okay.
They've done the research, and it's called the Agriculture Agri-Food Workforce Action Plan. It lists 2 overarching recommendations. This industry needs to fix the supply of labor, and it needs to invest in skills training for this industry. With those 2 components, fixing the supply of labor and ensuring the workforce is well skilled, this industry is really poised for growth and success. So the Workforce Action Plan has done the work, has done the research. It's led by Canada's National Labour Task Force. This industry has got its act together.
Yes.
It's really put some effort into coming together with one voice, all commodities across Canada.
I beg your pardon. I have paused your time. I noticed that the bells are ringing. I need to ask for unanimous consent to continue. I suggest we continue for approximately 15 minutes. Actually, less than that. We'll leave at right at past. Do I have unanimous consent? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Continue, please.
I just want to close with saying that we have prepared some binders for you. Everybody's leaving you with good information and good research. That Workforce Action Plan is in front of you. You have the clear recommendations, including the recommendation that Mark Wales spoke about, which is for this very complex industry. The industry is hoping for a center of specialization and some special attention to the needs of the industry as it's laid out in the Workforce Action Plan.
In that report, you also talk about expanding, improving pathways to permanent residency. And another recommendation, I think, is central office for LMIAs.
That's right.
Can you just elaborate on those?
So improving pathways to permanency are really critical for the issues that were described. We want to ensure that those workers who come in through the temporary foreign worker program of some sort have an opportunity to continue to be skilled workers in the industry that can grow with their jobs into real careers. And there are limited pathways to permanency within different provinces and within different skill sets. And that's really constricting the ability of Canadian trained workers who come to our country to stay with the businesses that have supported them.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, you don't have enough time for another question, I'm afraid. Moving on to Ms. Ashton, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today for this important study. It's clear that and based on the testimonials we've heard over the last few weeks, is that really what we're talking about here is the concept of immigration to our country. As the daughter of immigrants, both my parents immigrated to Canada. I know what it means to through my family what it means to come here for a better future for their children. Unfortunately, that is not something that is afforded to temporary foreign workers, certainly not those that will ever have access to permanent residency. It's been made known to us that since 2006, Canada has accepted more temporary foreign workers to our country than immigrants. And that is a problem. And so while I'm heartened to hear about, and we've heard it over the last few weeks, that a constant reference to access to citizenship, I think we have to be clear as to how that is core to the solution, but there's a lot more here that we need to be dealing with. I do want to direct my questions to UFCW and particularly a number of the points that you alluded to. First, I want to acknowledge, and it was touched on by High Life as well, that in Manitoba, workers do have access to a PNP program, and I would acknowledge that has everything to do with the kind of leadership we saw at the provincial government level from the NDP government, and that is not something that is available in other provinces to the extent that it is in our province as well, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. There must be political will so that workers can have access to citizenship. Just talking about it in theory is not going to cut it. I do want to bring it back to what, how the lack of access to status is connected to the potential abuse that workers might face. We just heard from the cousin of Sheldon McKenzie, a man who is from Jamaica, picking vegetables in Leamington, was hurt on the job, eventually died from his head injuries, but was at threat of being deported on a regular basis, and it was his cousin, who is a Canadian citizen, that was able to stop him from being deported. And so she talked about the ability to stay here and what it means to have access to citizenship. So could you talk to us a bit about what's at risk when people don't have access to citizenship?
The model that we're setting out with regard to UFCW, that UFCW Canada setting out, works in a unionized setting. The success that we've had with Maple Leaf, High Life, Olymel, Cargill, for instance, works because even where there's a road to permanent residency, during those 2 years, they're under a collective agreement. You have the union policing the collective agreement, dealing with grievances, health and safety issues. There's this huge, big union family working with the employer to get outcomes where the employer has those workers and keeps those workers. They're paid decent wages, they get benefits, some of them are allowed to bring their families during that period. It's a night and day difference between that and the regime that most migrant workers face across this country. Even where, say in Alberta, for instance, where you might have an opportunity to join a provincial nominee program in a non-unionized environment, whatever the industry, that's held out like a carrot. And we have layers and layers of cases where we've heard of abuses of these workers. So I know we've had this discussion from an economic perspective, which is, of course, fundamentally important to us as Canadians. But we can't just view the workers as commodities. They're human beings who are coming to this country, who have children, who pay taxes, who are part of nation building and part of the fabric of the country. So if we're going to have that dialogue, we've got to ensure that that road to permanent residency can't be a long one. If anything, permanent residency upon arrival is what's preferred. The less preferred is the road to permanent, the pathway to citizenship and permanent residency. Migrant workers in this country, and we know through the Live-In Caregiver program, that we have thousands upon thousands of cases of abuse and exploitation. About 4 years ago, we put together a book, and the book was called Migrant Worker Book of Abuse. There's 4 volumes. They stack about this high. I couldn't bring them on the plane. It's important that we bear that in mind, because if we're going down a road that is purely economic, and we believe in the economics of Canada, for goodness sake, but the key has to ensure that if we need workers, these jobs obviously are not temporary, that why don't we give them an opportunity to stay? But during that window where if they're working towards their permanent residency, that they're not just left out there alone, because that's where the abuses happen, and that's where people get injured, that's where people get killed. Thank you.
And just quickly, Mr. Mehta or Ms. Colocho, if you could speak to what it means that currently migrant workers pay into EI and aren't able to access it.
About 30 seconds, please.
Well, I just would like to say that it's hard for me to understand how we can contribute to EI, but when workers are without the job, without the work permit, then we don't have access. I have seen workers who have accessed it by mistake, and then they get penalties for something that we didn't know we didn't have the right to have, because I'm assuming if I'm paying into it, then I have the right to have it. I'm entitled to have it. So I myself don't really understand why is it that we don't have access. I think that should be something that needs to be reviewed.
Thank you very much. Quickly over to Mr. Rumi for the last word.
Thank you very much for everybody for coming today. I'm just going to go quickly, and we're going to go to Mr. Mehta. So, I mean, we've heard a lot of abuse stories. That seems to be the basis of a lot of testimony. However, you're telling us the opposite. You've got a great story sitting right next to you. Why? What's the single reason that your story is so different from everybody else's?
I'm glad you asked that question. The difference is, as I pointed out earlier, it's the ability during that road to permanent residency, while the worker comes to Canada, that we have a whole regime of protections around them. You know, and in this environment, it's a unionized environment. If you have the worker alone by themselves, say at a meatpacking plant, when most of the meatpacking industry is unionized, but suppose by themselves, no unions involved, that worker's fully on their own. And they're not like you and me being non-union. If I don't like my job, I can leave. They're tied to the employer on top of that. They have no labor mobility. The employer has them by the jugular.
Thank you. I'm going to keep moving because I don't have a lot of time. So while a tip line currently exists for TFWs experiencing abuse, well, first of all, do you think that's adequate? And do you have any ideas on how we can improve upon that for non-unionized workers?
So the tip line, like the enforcement, is, I'll call it nonsensical. There's, from my understanding, you know, the previous government had put together a book of you know, blacklisted employers, of which for years that book of blacklisted employers, there was very few names in it. Without real proactive enforcement, not relying on the worker to say, hey, I'm having a problem, but with governments going out into the fields, into workplaces, and actively monitoring employers, we will continue to have those abuses, and workers, human beings, will continue to be treated as commodities. And I don't think that's the Canada that we want.
So who or what bodies would you suggest would monitor the abuses? So, I mean, obviously, it's across the country. So how would we monitor? How would we be able to monitor? We couldn't just go out and send inspectors all over the place, could we?
Of course you could. Of course you could. Why couldn't we? We inspect all sorts of things in this country.
Okay.
I think you can do it at the federal level where things are under the federal jurisdiction, but there really has to be an honest conversation between the provinces and the federal government as to what they want that immigration regime to look like. Obviously, this is under federal jurisdiction, but it's important that if we don't have that dialogue, you have a patchwork of systems, whereas in Alberta you might have 5,000 provincial nominee seats versus in Ontario, depending on your skill level, you might have none.
Okay, thank you. Transferable work permits, currently it's tied to, it's an unfair relationship of power. So while maintaining respect for LMIAs, how can we balance workers' rights while ensuring that workers remain within the sector and region they've been hired as per their MLAs?
So some of it's in our submissions, and some of the other speakers have spoken to this. You can, if we're going to be a little ingenious, and I don't think it's actually an ingenious solution, is you have sectoral bargaining, and you have sectoral work permits as well. And I think that starts to answer that question. So when if you have one employer that is horribly bad, my preferred response to all of this is join a union. But if you have a horrible employer, you can at least go to another employer in that sector.
So 2014 amendments attempted to reduce the number of temporary foreign workers. This is the previous government. What are your thoughts made by those changes? How did that impact it?
Very briefly, please.
Very briefly.
Thank you.
So a couple of words. Ridiculous response to political imperatives that the previous regime had felt was bad for industry, bad for workers, bad for Canada, and bad for the economy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we are at the bottom of the hour, I would like to thank all of you for your attendance today and your witness testimony on this study. I'd like to thank all of the committee members, my stand-in clerk. Once again, thank you very much. The analysts. We will not be coming back, unfortunately. We do have more than one vote, so we will be adjourning today. Special thank you to Mr. Basio for standing in for Mr. Eves. And all those involved in making us look fantastic on television. I really appreciate that as well. We are adjourned.